We're now going to start the sugya of Osek mitzvah, pater mitzvah, which is, from a Gemara standpoint, starts in Chav Haim and Aleph, and really goes all the way to Chav Vav and Aleph. So we got a blot to do, a lot of Rishonim on it. It's a long sugya, but it's a really cool sugya because it really tests our understanding of principles in Gemara. There's a principle in halacha, Osek mitzvah, pater mitzvah. I love principles like. Another great one if you ever want to really, if you're in a masochistic mood, Sveik Sveika, okay? Sveik Sveika. So there's a famous shach on Sveik Sveika that's literally like 10, 15 pages long, and it's like goes through every single possible case, and yeah. This is not quite as, not as bad, but it's pretty good stuff. Chaf Hey and Aleph, Mishnah, Shluchei Mitzvah. Go ahead, Yaakov Eiferman.
Yeah, Shluchei Mitzvah,
Get your finger on the spot. Finger on the spot. Go ahead.
Messenger,
What's a messenger? Okay, take Rashi.
Okay, but there, Mitzvah, you're going like to Mitzvah, keep going. Mitzvah, block of Rabba, or to visit your rabbi. With those women, I have no idea that means.
Of course you do.
Free
prisoner.
Oh.
All right, interesting. So what Shluchei Mitzvah mean?
You're going to do something.
All right, so you're going to do a. Now, it's interesting. Now, look at very carefully the cases here. First of all, you can even ask, are there three different ideas here? But, I don't know if you have to be that technical, but think about it, though. These cases, you're not even going to do necessarily shake a lulav. These are three cases where you're what? You're on the road to get to a location, right? To, let's say, hear a shir. Okay, so we're not even talking about classic Maisa mitzvahs. You're not saying I'm going somewhere to eat matzah, okay? It's important to keep that in mind, all right? One other point to make, you need to be able to follow this whole sugya from beginning to end. Right? So if you get lost at a certain point, you got to tell me. Because once you get off that path, it's going to be too difficult to get you back on. Which means what? You guys are living in Israel now. You have to know what the word chaniya means. Or, excuse me, chaniya. Thank you. Again, parking, or chanyon. No, they use the same word today. Yeah, today they use that word. Oh, so Rashi's telling you that even when I'm not traveling, I'm at the side of the road, camping for the night, I'm pater from Sukka. Okay? Vafilu b'shas chaniyasan. Okay? Why afilu b'shas chaniyasan? What's the havmina there? We'll get to that. Okay? It's obviously a havmina. You would have thought it's only when I'm actually walking. When I'm at the side of the road, what do I have to do? Kamash Milan? No. In this case, by the way, we'll also get into, which is a great case. The two actually side cases we'll get into. One's going to be the area of Sheva Brachos, which is a cool sugya, and the other one is going to be Holchei Derech. Holchei Derech is what everybody does during Sukkot. What does everybody do in this country on Sukkot? No. Oh, worse. What does everybody in this country do on Sukkot? They go do what? Everyone travels. Okay. The question is, if you go traveling, are you pater from Sukkot? We'll see.
But it's not a mitzvah.
Oh, we'll see. Okay.
If you're going to travel,
We'll see. Okay, finish the Mishnah. Okay, this is case one. Case two is Umisham Sheyan. That too. Right.
Temporary eating and drinking.
Okay, so we're not going to do that sugya at all. So don't worry about temporary eating. But what's the second case? What's the second case? What's Cholon Umisham Sheyan? What does that mean? Attendance. Okay, so if you're sick, that's the other sugya we're going to do also, which is mitzvah. If you're sick, you're pater from sukkah. Okay, why? It's an uncomfortable environment to be in. No, Moshe is right? So who cares? So what? Guess what? If I told you that lots of mitzvahs are uncomfortable, so why should that be? When I wake up in the morning, I put on my tefillin, I'm not so comfortable. What? So? If I have a cold, I still got to put on tefillin. I got to put on my tzitzis.
Yeah, but that's hard. Going outside,
we'll get to that. We'll get to that. All right. These are all cases we're going to take up. Now, Gemara. Menan Amili.
Where do you know these words? The Tanakh is from Versa. V'shit Rav Yisecha, Pasek, Palo Sefer Mitzvah, excluding when you're involved in the mitzvah. We went to Rav there, Palo Pasek, excluding a.
Okay, so straight to Rashi. Okay, straight to Rashi. And I'll explain what this Gemara is saying in a second. But Rashi says, B'shiftecha v'secha. Okay, so it's important to get our bearings here. Okay, the Gemara wants to establish the principle of Osek mitzvah pater mitzvah. Okay, it wants to establish that principle. Okay, Where's it going to go to? So it's going to this drush. This drush teaches you your pater from what? Kriya Shema, and that's used as the foundation for all other situations as well. So I'm gonna be using all mitzvahs as a general reference, but the starting point is Kriya Shema. Kriya Shema is the starting point. So what does it say in Kriya Shema? It says B'shiftecha b'veisecha. That will come to not yet. That will come to exclude the guy who's involved in the mitzvah. U'lachtach v'derech, that excludes the chassan. Okay, what does that mean? We have no idea because the Gemara now asks. You. Yeah, keep going. Hakones. So the deduction the Gemara makes from this, now this we're going to take this sugi up, but this comes up later on. Okay, we're going to touch on it briefly, but most of it comes up later on. But what we learn out from this is that if you go ahead, if a chassan, okay, is marrying a basula, he's pater from Kriya Shema. But if he marries an almana, what's an almana? A widow, meaning she's had sexual relations before. So in that case, he's chayav. All right. So you're going to make this some sort of chiluk here. There's a chiluk. There's a differentiation between marrying a basula and marrying a almana. So one of them is if you're pater from Kriya Shema. $64,000 question. What's the other chiluk that exists by chassan marrying a basula versus almana? Chazal distinguish between the experience of marrying a virgin versus someone who's not a virgin. All right. So one
If the chatan is his first time getting married?
Irrelevant. We don't care about the chassan. Okay. It's always about the kala, right? We care about his simcha. Her simcha comes later. Anyway, it does. The first year, chayv to be sameach her. It's a chiyuv. You have to make her happy by going to yeshiva, learning 12 hours a day. Anyway,
There we go. The Haredi derech.
so one way to distinguish is that if you're a chassan, you're pater from Kriya Shema if you marry a basula. Another way it does is that by sheva brachas. When you marry a basula, you get the full Sheva Yimei Mishta, full 7 days of partying. But you only get less, about 3, something like that, when it comes to an almana. Now that we've established this difference, okay, so now let's get into the drush. My mashma. My mashma meaning what? What's it? How do you know it's from the drush?
Right.
How does the drush make any sense?
How is this simple?
Right. How do you know that b'shivtecha v'yisachav v'derech means
That's
this?
what my mashma means?
Yeah. What? Rav Huda says kederech.
Yes.
Kederech. What does kederech mean?
It's a way.
Oh, yeah, what? So no, go back to. Okay, I'm sorry. Before you even get to that point, go back to Rashi. Uvlatcha v'derech prat l'chasan. We didn't do that yet.
We have to go here now. To who nami the mitzvah tarid.
Okay, so now what's he saying? Rashi's cheating a little bit, which he's allowed to because he's Rashi. Rashi's giving you a heads up what's coming up later on. But what's he saying? Literally saying the afagav the hunami b'mitzvah tarid.
He's
right?
also involved in the mitzvah.
Right, but in order so the chassan, okay. What do you mean by he's involved in the mitzvah? When is he involved in the mitzvah?
When he's
Not the it can't be the maisabia, right?
Before.
Right? In other words, the chassan's what's the chassan doing before he gets married?
Thinking.
He's thinking about I can't wait. That's what he's thinking about, right? So that's part of the mitzvah. Part of the mitzvah for a chassan is to think about this. Rashi's going to say it later on, okay?
Wait, one second, sorry.
So Rashi says what? He says, yeah. So what you need? So what's bothering Rashi? What's bothering Rashi? Even though we know it's a mitzvah by the chassan, it's starchilahu trey cry, which means what? So what's he bothered by?
There are two references.
Why we need this?
Right. Why do you have 2 references?
Okay.
Why are there 2 references?
Both for chassan?
No, but in other words, all you have to do is say uvlachtecha v'shivtecha v'yisacha proud Osek mitzvah. Right, it should be included in the category of the chassan of the. It just mixed me up. It should be included in the category of Osek mitzvah. You understand? In other words, Rashi. We're not going to define this yet, but Rashi's saying you have a category established with v'shivtecha v'yisacha. Right, that category is anytime you're involved in a mitzvah, you're pater. Why should that not include the chassan?
So the fact that we see 2 categories means there was a havamina to think that they're different?
Correct. Which we'll have to answer.
Yes.
Good. That's the right question to ask.
What?
That's the right question to ask.
Okay.
The fact that Rashi's telling that to you is that you have a real havamina to think that what? That the chassan would be different. Why would the chassan be different? Read Rashi.
Adi havi kasiv chad, if it written 1. Kevin the chassan la behedya, kasiv. Since it's not explicitly written in the pasuk, havamina lo pater.
A kasav.
You think that the kasav did not make him pater. Torech v'yosei melchas mitzvah.
Biyadayim. Oh. Mahalach mitzvah. So if it didn't mention, if we didn't have the chassan, right? What would you think? What would you think normally asuk mitzvah pater mitzvah means? Rashi's telling you.
Actually doing it.
And this is key. We're gonna have to use this to define. Yeah, exactly. Toreach ve'oseh meleches mitzvah biyadayim. What does the asuk mean? It means that I am picking up a lulav. I am putting on my tefillin. I am eating my matzah.
He's doing a matzah.
So again, just to make it clear, Rashi's saying that. Why would you think? Okay, we know one thing. We know one thing. We know right there. So I'll read it again. So even though we know the chassan is involved in the mitzvah, right? It's tarchalu trei cry. We need two separate psukim. Why? In fact, it doesn't mention the chassan. Why is a chassan different than other mitzvahs? What's a chassan doing?
He's not mentally.
He's not doing right. He's mentally doing something. He's not doing a ma'isa. So you would think asuk b'mitzvahs only applies to people doing an action. What's a chassan doing? He's thinking about, I'm going to have beer later on. So what? Just because a guy think about this, Moshe. Just because a guy is thinking about having beer with his wife later on, right? That's considered asuk b'mitzvah, as if he's involved in a mitzvah, even though he's not doing anything with. That's probably not the appropriate motion to do. No, he's not. Finish Rashi. So Rashi says, "Aval chasan shehu yoshevu bata ve'ina osek ela tared b'machshavas beila." What's he doing? The chasan sitting around, and what's he thinking about? Having relations with his future wife. Okay, so therefore,
and that's cool.
That's cool. Hilkach mikra yiserash binan depater makriya shma detar machshavas beila. So the chiddush is, we're going to define this soon, but the chiddush is that even thinking about the mitzvah, thinking about what he's going to be involved in, is considered asuk. So that's why you need the second pasuk for. Okay? You need the second pasuk to teach you that you would think that asuk mitzvah means something I'm doing with my hands. But even thinking, the second pasuk is telling you even something that's tarad machshava is considered asuk mitzvah. Why? Gemara says, so again, going back to this, so my mashma, Amar Avuna, that's your cue.
Yeah.
Ki. What does kederach mean, Rashi?
Kiderach Rashi or Kiderach Marishma?
Kiderach.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
Holech.
Holech.
I'm sorry, go back to the first Rashi. My mashma. So how do you know that these psukim are talking about asuk mitzvah pater mitzvah? How do you even know this idea to be true? Right. So Rashi then says kiderach. So he's establishing a category. Derech holech v'derech skora is
for business, for optional stuff.
Right, optional activities. Right. Okay, derech means here optional activities. So what would you think?
Hold on. Okay.
What? Well, hold on. Keep going in the Gemara. Ma
derech rishus, or ma derech.
Ma derech rishus, meaning walking to business, which is which is optional. I'm chayev to do a mitzvah that comes along. Af kol rishus. Anytime I'm doing a non-obligatory activity, I'm eating my breakfast. All right, and all of a sudden, a mitzvah comes along that if I don't do it right now, I'm going to miss the opportunity. What do? I stop eating breakfast and do the mitzvah. Okay, so lafuke to exclude asa. Okay, all right. So now we have our first. We're not going to define this yet. I want to get to the facts first. We have our first question though. What question should you be asking on this Gemara? If you need a pasuk to teach this to you, what would you have thought? You would have thought that if I am going to work, right, maybe I'm patur for mitzvahs.
Is this Rashi's question or is this?
The question is that the Gemara seems to be implying that maybe you could construct a logical possibility that if I'm walking to work, or eating breakfast, or playing basketball, and the opportunity to do a mitzvah comes along, maybe you'll say, what? I'm patur. So you need this to come along and teach you that you're chayav. But what situation are you not? Okay, Moshe, I want to make sure you understand that. The Gemara is positing, maybe it's possible to say that if I'm playing basketball, and a mitzvah comes along, I don't have to stop playing basketball? I don't have to. But we conclude that no, I am had to do the mitzvah. The only time I'm patur from doing another mitzvah is when I'm doing a mitzvah. That's the only way it could work is that if I'm involved in A, then I don't have to do B, assuming A and B are mitzvahs. But if I'm playing basketball and the mitzvah comes along, I got to stop and do the mitzvah. Okay? That's the first question we're going to have to define. Now, next, the Gemara says, really? How do you know that this drush is telling you that if I'm involved in a mitzvah, I'm patur from another mitzvah? Maybe you'll think what?
that you're going to do.
V'ka amar Rachmana likri, right? So what could you have thought? You could have thought what?
That you're just going to mitzvah?
No, no.
Okay. Yeah. You can. So.
So look at Rashi. Look at Milo Askinan. V'chienach.
What is that?
And can't you, and maybe not Yachol? Can't you lechlol include
The mikveh derech mitzvah.
im harashos? Maybe what you'll say is like this: when it says derech means any activity, not just an optional activity. If I'm involved in any activity, I'm pater from a mitzvah, including what?
I think it's just.
Well, Rishus, we know you're we know Rishus you're pater, right? But maybe you'll think, what? I'm sorry, I said it the wrong way. It's the opposite. In other words, maybe you'll think that if I'm involved in an activity, I'm chayiv in a mitzvah. Okay? Even if I'm involved in a mitzvah. Maybe you'll say that if I'm involved in a mitzvah right now, I'm not pater from the other mitzvah that comes along. I got to stop what I'm doing and do the other mitzvah.
Maybe you'll say because of what? All activities.
No, right, that's how you can learn it. But meaning what? Meaning that there's no logical imperative to say the following. You don't have to say that. Why do we say asuk mitzvah, pater mitzvah? Maybe you should say asuk mitzvah, chayiv mitzvah. You're going to lose somewhere. If I'm involved in, let's assume you have two mitzvahs, right, that are fleeting. Listen, two mitzvahs that are fleeting, and I'm involved in mitzvah A. Mitzvah B comes along, and I've got 20 seconds to do it. Okay? The only way to do it is for me to stop mitzvah A and do mitzvah B. I'm making up a mitzvah, but it's just a good example. Okay? So the question is that why do we assume that because I'm in A, I don't have to do B? Maybe you'll say no. I should stop A and do B. Where's the logical imperative to say I must do that? So I'm just dealing with pure mitzvah per se. You're already introducing external elements. For instance, now one of them could be maybe shorter time limit, once in a lifetime mitzvah. You'll see a case going to come out Korban Pesach, once in a lifetime mitzvah. Or what about on the scale, like I don't know, a mitzvah of a super heavy duty deraisa versus not the biggest deal kind of deraisa. How does this going to work? All right, how does the system work? Okay, Rashi's saying that derech should include mitzvah, meaning all activities. Anytime I'm involved in an activity, I have to stop it and do the mitzvah, even a mitzvah.
Wait, what?
Yeah. This is the retort to the drush. The drush is derech, and what does derech teach you? Derech says, if I'm involved in an optional activity, I have to stop it and do a mitzvah. But if I'm involved in an obligatory activity, i.e. a mitzvah, I'm pater. So he says, why you don't have to read it that way. You can read derech to mean any activity.
Any derech.
Any derech.
Not just derech to do stuff.
Optional. Right. Even chayav, even obligatory, even mitzvah. Even mitzvah, I'm engaged in mitzvah, and since I'm engaged in mitzvah, who cares? Another mitzvah's come along. Got to drop what I'm doing and do that other mitzvah.
So how do we know derech?
How do you define that? How are you going to define that? That's the challenge. We're not up to that defining yet, but that's going to be a challenge. Now the Gemara says... No, bisheves. Bisheves. Uvleches, meaning, what does that mean, bisheves uvleches? Right, sitting and going, not bishiftecha, which means you sitting and you walking. Why does the you make a difference?
You, it's should I go on?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're walking. When you're walking to do you things, right? That's when you're chayav to stop and do the mitzvah. But when you're doing, right? When you're doing habaleches the mitzvah, petiras, okay?
You're doing a mitzvah?
But when you're doing a mitzvah, now the mitzvah is not a you activity; it's a what activity?
God's activity.
A God activity. Okay. So when you're doing a God activity, then you don't have to drop the God activity to do another mitzvah. Okay. So that's the answer is the b'shiftecha is the cha. In other words, it's not derech. It's what you're doing on the derech, right? Darkecha, so to speak. But so you're doing. Okay. So now the Gemara continues and says, "Ihachi."
If so, if you're like kones is a mana. Also, if you marry a widow.
So what's that question? Why is that a great question?
Not mental stuff.
Well, it's saying what? We've established what? We've established that if I'm engaged in a mitzvah, right, I should be pater from another mitzvah, right? Even if I'm tarid. So 1 second. So why should I'm mentally engaged?
Because
Okay.
mentally engaged,
So why-
you can't conquer.
So right. So why does that not apply to the almana?
There's learning to conquer. So therefore there's
Say no. No. 1 second. So it says what? It says no. It says kones as a betsula, right? Kones as someone alotarid, right? Oh, 1 second. But 1 second. 1 second. But so what's really bothering the Gemara? What's really bothering the Gemara here? We're starting to make differentiations in Tarid and mental engagements.
What's the difference between an almana and
Basula, right? But more so. Right, we're trying. What kind of thing is it to start saying? Well, there's degrees of taridness. If I am tarid, then I'm pater for my mitzvah. Now you can tell me I'm more tarid. You are. It's not like you're not tarid by an almana. You are. Fine. You're not as tarid as by the klasa. But think a little categorically. If it's a din in the gavra, right? At a gavra, if he's tarid, he's pater for mitzvah. So who cares how tarid he is? Once he's defined as a tarid, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't make a difference. Okay.
You like 0 to 1 more than 1 to 2.
Right. Go on. So now what? Okay. Every case that you're tarid, you should be pater. What would be an example? But you see, that's not true. How do we know it's not true? How do we know that every case that you're tarid, you're not pater? Because watch what the Gemara says. Svinasa biyam, the tarid. So what's that case?
You are on sea and you're worried about dying.
Okay, yeah, your ship is sinking, but not the ship that you're on. Okay, you have let's say a perfect example is I made aliyah. So before you make aliyah, what do? You put all your belongings on what's called a lift, which is one of those big shipping containers. Now let's say this guy calls you up on the ship and says, by the way, the ship's going down. Okay, so what are you thinking about now? Your stuff's on that ship, right? So the question is,
No CK, just
right. Fetch. So now, yeah. So
Fetch.
now, right. So now the ship's going down. So now the question is, what am I thinking about? My loss of my stuff. Am I pater for mitzvahs?
That's you.
That's not thinking about
you.
mitzvah.
Okay, but am I pater from doing mitzvahs?
No.
Okay, so keep going to the Gemara. Hold on.
Okay.
The Hamar of right, and this is really indeed the case. The Hamar of Abba Bar Zibda Amarav. It means v'chitei mahachanami. If this is the case, it should also be here. Avel. Pair. Okay, so an Avel is chayv in all mitzvahs except for tefillin. Okay, I'm not getting to the area of Avelos now, but he's chayv in all mitzvahs. And yet what? What's saying? But what is an Avel? He's tarid. And what is he? Chayav. So 1 second. By one case, it seems like he's pater. Another case, he's chayav. What's going on? How do we understand tarid? Pair means like one adornment, a nice adornment, beautiful. Yeah. Just watch. We're gonna. That's a big part as far as what tarid means. But just finish the Gemara. And we gotta do Rashi.
Here the burden or involvement is the burden of the mitzvah. Hasam tarid here the dishos. There the tarid is the
Rishos. Okay, so what? Let's make sense of all this. Take a look at Rashi. Well, you got to look at Rashi first. I'll explain everything. Okay, so look at Rashi. Start from Imkain. I'm sorry, Tarid. Libo. So what's he thinking about? This is talking about the chassan. Mishum tirda. Patre. So the Torah is coming to teach you that he because of him being Torah, that's why he's pater. Now this is the key line in Rashi. Ve'eno yachol lasok b'shnayim ke'echad. What's the problem? The problem is this is critical. We have to understand that this is the first opening, very tiny. What's the problem with us against the pater mitzvah? I can't do them. So if I'm thinking about bia, I can't do another mitzvah. I can't. I'm unable to do both of them. My state of mind prevents you from doing the other one. Not that you're getting a free pass. Oh, so the nature of the now you got to remember it says lo tarid by the almana that he's not. That's a lie. He is thinking about having bia with his future wife. Fine, maybe it's not to the extent of the basula, but the Gemara is saying he's lo tarid, and therefore what he could do both. He could do both. I can say Kriya Shema. I can think about the fact I'm having when I have relations with her later on, and I can say Kriya Shema.
That sounds like technology.
You got to be careful. Okay, we got to be very careful. I know you're right. Keep going. So mishum tirda.
I did para from
So maybe you'll say, what's the idea of tirda? What's tirda mean? It means that I am focused on something to a point where because of my focus, not Maisa, not I'm doing an action, but focusing, my ship is sinking with all my belongings are on that ship. Okay, and all I can think about is one thing. This entire loss. How can I do another mitzvah? Let's finish Rashi. Rashi says, "The hilchach afilu tavas finasa the tarabitz aro liftar." So therefore, even in a situation, as long as I'm tarad in X, interesting by the way. That's why you know the answer is going to be mitzvah. But as long as there's a havamina here, another havamina that tarad per se, not hisaskus with my hands. Okay, but Torah, I'm thinking about the fact that my ship is going down with all my life's belongings on it. Maybe I'm pater from a mitzvah.
But not in what?
Not in.
It's in the not in what you're thinking. Just that you're thinking.
I'm consumed by something.
Yeah.
Okay. So now why is the other come and show you that's not the case? So look at the next Rashi. Forget the Shnever B'Hampe'er. Okay. Look at Chassan. Oh, I'm sorry. He doesn't even say it. I'm sorry. Rashi even answered that. So what makes the Amana different? The Avel. Okay. What makes the Avel different? Well, okay, take a look at Chassan to Tar to the mitzvah. Okay? So we see from the Torah, again, look at his Lashon. You're not obligated to lahasser daito. What does that mean? Right, from thinking about this mitzvah rishona, of this bia rishona. He doesn't have to stop thinking about it. We don't want him to stop thinking about it. Okay, bishvil zu habalav, for this that's coming to him, i.e., bia rishona, right? Elo yasok barishona. Listen to this line. Okay, ready? Listen to this line. V'yitain libo lios baki b'davar. Come on, what does that mean? V'yitain libo lios baki b'davar. Yeah. What does he have to be thinking about? Not just about bia, more than that. What? No, Leos Baki B'Davar.
You should be Baki in the thing.
Right, meaning what? Come on, you got it.
Know what he's doing.
Right. You should be good at it.
Whoa.
He has to think about, not just think about in other words, he's not just consumed by the fact that he's having bia. He's going to be having bia with his new wife. But he should be thinking about how to do it.
Wow.
Here the Rishos. Let me finish last Rashi. Rechitza v'sicha. Mesa. Now, okay, so what's Rashi saying? This is the most astounding point of them all. One second. This is the culmination of the whole thing, and then we can stop and start defining. Rashi's saying, why is the Avel, he's tarad, right? He's thinking about the mace. Oh, my poor, whatever, my thing. Give me the most horrible case. A child. My son died, right? My son died.
My son drove off the cliff.
Even worse. That's just the way he died. Okay, fine. My son drove off a cliff. Now, listen to what it's saying. Are you tarad there?
Yes.
Yeah. That's tir to the Rishus. Why?
It's his tarad.
No. It's tir to the Rishus. Why is it Rishus? Why is it an optional?
It's very big.
Actually, no, that's a bad example.
There's no mitzvah attached to it?
Eino chayav lehitstayer. In other words, an avel has to do what's called nihu gavelis. For instance, I can't bathe. I can't do this. I got to sit in the ground. I have to wear my torn clothing. I'm not chayav to be mitzvah. There's no chayav to be sad. Right? So there's no chayav to be sad. That's tir to the rishus. Harsh. So tir to the mitzvah, which is listen, right. So tir to the mitzvah is that I must be thinking about having sexual relations with my wife, and therefore I'm pater from Kriya Shema. But by the avel, he doesn't have to be sad. He doesn't have to be thinking about being sad. Okay, but it's saying, the Hamid is saying is that if you're defined as an asuk, right? By definition, you don't have to do nothing, and you don't have to do anything else.
We haven't defined busy.
Asuk
We
means
already did.
right. I am doing something. I'm an asuk. I'm a gavra who's an asuk. So once I'm asuk, what else do I have to, I'm not chayv in anything else. I'm asuk. I'll do the mitzvah later on. Why? Because I'm an asuk right now. I'm defined as an asuk.
I'm terrified that.
The Gemara is not seriously taking up the possibility. This is where the religion part comes in. It's not seriously taking up the possibility that if you weigh out me going to work versus the mitzvah, of course the mitzvah is more important. It's just saying that we're trying to understand what does asuk mean. So what would you think it means? It means that I am engaged in an activity. So if engagement in activity per se defines you as an asuk, then maybe you'll think that I don't do another mitzvah. All right? But so therefore, what does it mean then?
It says asuk b'mitzvah.
By establishing this idea that we know it doesn't just mean activity per se, now you can start getting a sense of what asuk does mean.
Wasn't that?
Why this is the derech of the Gemara. Because what's the Gemara's next question? It's the logical question you would ask on this. What's the maskana? The Hamid is saying that if you define as an asuk in any way, shape, or form, you're not pacha from anything else, right? For any mitzvah. But one second. So what's the conclusion? No. The conclusion is that if I'm involved in an optional activity, right, I got to stop, right? Stop what I'm doing and do the mitzvah. Stop. So one second. If the idea is of that stopping what I'm doing to do the other mitzvah, shouldn't that also include mitzvah? Understand? Well, okay. That's the key thing to answer. Fine. So now the Gemara is very. We're dealing with a pendulum here. The Gemara first says, okay, asuk. What does asuk mean? What I'm engaged in activity. All right. Oh, was it so? But now we learned that no, it's not. In other words, if it's engagement in activity per se, right? Then what would you say? You'd say that I don't have to ever do a mitzvah. Okay, forget the logical consequence of that. I want to do a mitzvah. So now the Gemara says, no. The Gemara says, one second. The Gemara says, okay, fine. So what must it mean? It must mean that if I'm involved in an activity, right, I have to stop my activity and do a mitzvah. So the question is, why shouldn't the idea of stopping my activity to do a mitzvah include mitzvah itself? I should stop the mitzvah I'm doing and do the other mitzvah. That's the other extreme of the argument. What'd you say? Now the question is, you should stop and do the mitzvah. So the Gemara has a very good question. If the formula is as simple as saying stop and do the mitzvah, asuk is not a good reason. Whatever I'm doing, I stop and do the mitzvah. Why doesn't that include mitzvah itself? I should stop the mitzvah I'm doing. Why not?
It says stop all activities. Why not?
Why not? Be clear. Because the principle is, I have two converging mitzvahs in front of me, and I'm engaged in one. Okay, and the other one's converging now. Okay, it's coming right now. That's two logical possibilities. One possibility is
stop A, do B.
Stop A, do B. The other possibility is
continue to do A.
Exactly.
Is this where you
Give me the first possibility. What the Gemara said you could have designed the system to be that way.
Stop.
Commercial is this way. What now? Doesn't matter. You got to be careful. I'm not saying one has to make more sense than the other. I just want to say the Gemara is saying it could have been logically constructed a certain way. What's that construction? The construction of the principle of asuk b'mitzvah, chayv b'mitzvah. In other words,
You're
just
not
because
free to have sick.
So if you're telling me that it should include mitzvah as well, meaning that derech includes mitzvah, right? So then what does that? What does that mean? That which would mean that therefore, right? I have to stop what I'm doing, right? So then what you would have to argue then is that built into every mitzvah is that idea. In the construct of every mitzvah exists the notion of stopping what I'm doing, right? Or it's a different one. No, I'll put it a different way. There's like this. In other words, what's the idea of? There's an idea that exists in mitzvah, right? Which you said before, which is that I have to drop what I'm doing and do a mitzvah, right? That's an idea in mitzvah. A mitzvah demands. In other words, in the institution of mitzvah, there's a demand that I stop doing whatever I'm doing and do the mitzvah. You understand? It's in the very construct of the mitzvah itself to stop what I'm doing and do the mitzvah.
You must do this now.
Right, but that's built into the construct.
By default, doing this now, you can't be doing something else now.
Right, so therefore, even if I'm involved in a mitzvah, when the other mitzvah comes along, what happens when that mechayiv emerges?
It supersedes it.
How? Because built into every mitzvah is to do what?
Now. It's a time window.
Right, but you have to understand where it's coming from, and that's the beauty of this idea. It's a little difficult. It's hard to express it clearly, but it's like this. What? Not reason. No. Like this.
Every mitzvah.
Every mitzvah contains. In other words, what the Gemara is proposing is that every mitzvah would contain the principle of stop whatever you're doing and do this mitzvah. Okay, let's take lulav. Not that it's legitimate case. Let's take lulav. So in the mitzvah lulav, exists in the mitzvah lulav is that whatever I'm doing right now, I got to do lulav. Whatever I'm doing now, I must stop and do lulav. That's in the mitzvah lulav.
Now being like the daytime.
The daytime, right? Okay, I'm not saying it's a practical case. Yeah. So what's the Gemara saying? The Gemara is saying this. The Gemara is saying that if that's a principle that exists in every mitzvah, even if I'm involved in the mitzvah of right now, right? When this new mitzvah of lulav comes along, what's included in that mitzvah? Stop whatever you're doing, do the mitzvah.
Not necessarily.
That's the principle of the mitzvah.
At least the possibility. Not necessarily, but at least the possibility.
No, in the Havamina. The Havamina is saying that's how it would work. You must stop what you're doing because that is a property of a mitzvah. Built into the mitzvah is stop whatever you're doing and do the mitzvah.
Okay, but that's only fine. It doesn't have to be ASAP.
Why does it have to be true? Let's say I'm walking to work and now the chiyuv of lulav comes upon me. What do I have to do? Just play it out for now.
How long is the window?
Let's assume the window's a down window. What? You got to do lulav. Just make it simple. Don't worry about how long you do the mitzvah for the day. No, you're going to get lost if you worry about that. Let's just assume it's Let's assume it's Kriya Shema, right? And I got an hour.
Right, then I agree.
Okay. You got to right. So you got to stop doing what you're doing. But the question is, so where would the patur emerge from then? There's still a patur here, but the patur doesn't come from the mitzvah I'm engaged in now. The patur comes from the other mitzvah. Now, the other mitzvah demands that I stop what I'm doing and do it. So therefore, by doing it, I'm now put because I had to do that. I'm not put from the first mitzvah.
Right. Okay.
The Gemara's Havina, if you really want to think it in a more of a global way, the Gemara's Havina is saying, the Gemara's Havina is really playing with the possibility of, even though I'm engaged in the reality of mitzvah A now, when the reality of mitzvah B, I shouldn't say reality, when mitzvah B comes along, there's a reality of that mitzvah B now. Now the question is, if a property of every mitzvah is the idea that I must stop when I'm doing whatever I'm doing, I'm walking to work, mitzvah comes along, I got to stop and do the mitzvah. And that's a property of a mitzvah. Okay, now the question is, mitzvah B comes along, built into that mitzvah is the property of stop whatever you're doing, do the mitzvah. But what's unique about that? Mitzvah B produces therefore a patur from mitzvah A. So even though right now I'm engaged in mitzvah A, mitzvah B gives me a patur to leave it and do that.
It makes more sense that the tension.
No, it's a good thing. Yaakov, you're raising a very smart point. It's not that mitzvah B supersedes mitzvah A, because that's a question of if a mitzvah is greater. It's not that mitzvah B is greater than mitzvah A.
The law of mitzvahs.
It's the law. Exactly. The law of mitzvah. the law of mitzvahs demands that you stop what you're doing and do a mitzvah. That's part of the law of mitzvah. Every mitzvah has that feature in it. Stop what you're doing and do the mitzvah.
Right, so if that's a given, why would there ever be a chiyuv to Christmas?
What do you mean? What if I'm? What was he? Am I chayim Kriya Shema? Let's say it's not Zman Kriya Shema.
Well, delay the velocity. I don't know.
Well, one second. We have to now reject that idea and say that no. What's the system? Asuk mitzvah, pater mitzvah, right? Which would therefore mean that.
Can we not use the phrase till we actually see it?
No, this is the conclusion right now. No, this is the conclusion. The Gemara is saying now, but it has to be, because now the next question is going to be Torah. Now we're going to take up the issue now of the nature, in other words,
the nature of us.
This is clarify. The Gemara is building a building. The first thing the Gemara has to build is two things. First of all, what's the Gemara trying to build? They're trying to build one major point, which is that we have to first understand how there is the principle of asuk mitzvah pater mitzvah works in a certain direction, meaning I am involved in A, and now that I'm pater from B. So you got to hash out that logical possibility.
Right. That's a unique movement.
Right.
We have to really lock it down. What exactly is the nature?
Right. So the next step's going to be Torah. But before we get to Torah, though, one last thing we have to just be clear about. Okay. Yeah. So clearly, we're saying there's no property in the mitzvah that says that I now have to stop what I'm doing and do. That can't be. If that were the case, it would include mitzvah as well. There'd be no way to exclude it. So in other words, if you're telling me there's a property that exists in mitzvah, and the notion of mitzvah that drop what you're doing and do the mitzvah, then that would include even if I'm involved in the mitzvah, drop what you're doing and do the mitzvah.
Right.
Okay. So the Gemara is saying that's not true, right? So it's saying the Gemara is saying it's not true because it's saying that that's the idea of derech. Excuse me, that's the idea of b'shiftecha. Okay, b'shiftecha is coming to teach you. See, derech alone wouldn't do that. What's b'shiftecha telling you? No, what's b'shiftecha telling you?
Derech will do what?
If you're already sitting in a mitzvah, you don't.
No, 1 second. I'm saying all we know is one thing. We know that forget the Torah for a second. We know one thing. We know that asuk mitzvah, pater mitzvah. Okay. But 1 second. I'm saying. Okay, I'm sorry. We know.
What do you mean we know?
You're right. We don't know. I apologize. We don't know asuk mitzvah, pater mitzvah. What we do know though is that it can't be asuk mitzvah, chayv mitzvah. That we do know. It can't be if I'm involved in a mitzvah right? Therefore, I just drop it and do the other
No,
mitzvah.
from the three Mishnah cases.
From when the Gemara says like this, the Gemara says, no, the Gemara says, "V'ka amar rachmana likre im kain lema kra b'sheves ubelaches." Then it should have said b'sheves ubelaches. Now the fact it says b'lachtecha, it means what kind of activities? When am I chayav to do mitzvahs? When I'm involved in you activities, but when I'm involved in when I'm involved in mitzvah activities, I'm pater. That's what the Gemara says. B'shiftacha tells you you activities. What's that really telling you? Simple point. Simple idea. What's it telling you? What is it? There's no property of a mitzvah to tell you to stop doing what you're doing and do the mitzvah. Therefore, what must it be? Is coming to tell you that no, it's only when you chayv mitzvahs when it's b'shiftacha activities. Meaning, if I'm walking to work, and that's for me, then I'm chayv in a mitzvah. But if I'm involved in a mitzvah, if I'm not involved, if I'm involved in the mitzvah, right? The mitzvah p'tiras, right? So, right. So, what's the answer? Tell me if you're going to tell me. And it's a very, if you think about it later on, maybe you got to reflect on it a little bit. If you think about it later on, you'll really see why this is a really nice, concise idea. The Gemara is saying that you would have thought that built into the very construct of mitzvah is the idea that is the halachic imperative to stop what I am doing and do the mitzvah. Kamashwan that no. It's not built into the contract in the mitzvah. So what is it then?